Hello, everyone, and welcome to our most recent hit of World Rugby's Between the Lines series. And this time round, a guest I've been chasing for ages and ages and ages. World Rugby Hall of Famer, World Cup winner Maggie Alphonsi. How you doing?
Oh, I'm really well, actually. Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm currently almost 8 months pregnant, so just getting through the heat. But yeah, I'm doing okay.
8 months pregnant. Must be the craziest of times to go through that with everything else that's going on in the world.
Do you know what? Being in lockdown has probably been a good thing for me because it's allowed me just to concentrate on, getting my body right, and exercising indoors has been a bit of a challenge. But other than that, everything has been fine. Like I said, it's just the heat. I have to say, I'm feeling it. I thought playing sevens in the heat was hard, but being pregnant in the heat is so much more harder, I have to say.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. You're on the home straight on that front. What else has been keeping you busy? I see your name popping up here, there, and everywhere at the moment. What else is keeping you on your toes?
Well, first, I'm currently trying to complete a MBA degree. So I'm doing my thesis now, and then just looking at, BAME representation. So Black, Asian, minority, ethnic people in senior leadership roles within sport. So I'm just finishing that. I am still doing lots of public speaking, but virtually, which has been interesting. And I also work as a director of a program at a health insurance company called Vitality. So it's all been just balancing everything up, really. But I've kind of enjoyed having lots of different things to sort of focus on and not get bored, because obviously this lockdown period, or the period that we're sort of coming out of now, has been a challenge for everyone. But I've managed to maintain some balance, which has been nice.
Well, it's been one of the things that you've done so well since coming out of international rugby, retiring in 2014 after claiming that World Cup. We've got to touch in on some of that. I've been watching your highlights all afternoon. Yes, Maggie, I've been dialed into some of your best moments in the England jersey across today, and there are plenty to choose from, 74 tests in total. I know that you've previously already given your three favourite World Cup moments, one of which, actually, I was surprised by kind of your number one. Why was it not 2014 winning? And I think you had the 2010 hosting in England as your go-to. Why did that supersede actually winning the World Cup in 2014 down in France?
Yeah, I think because in 2010, first, a home World Cup is always special. So having it in England was amazing, and then having the final at Twickenham Stoop was special because it was the first time I think women's rugby ever had a massive crowd like that. So I think we just we're just under 14,000, which was big back then. And it was the first time I think women's rugby was starting to get put on the map, especially in England. So we started to get media interest. We started to all, as players, get profiles as well. So I think that was what made it special. Look, I was gutted that we lost the game, especially by 3 points. So the score was 10-13 to New Zealand. But at the same time, I think the tournament was a special tournament. And I think it kick-started, the further interest in the women's game. And now we've seen ever since then, really, every tournament has been brilliant. The sevens is obviously amazing as well. So I like to think that was kind of like the start of the women's era.
Before we get to that game 4 years later, take me back to the beginning. Obviously, it has transformed in your time in the game. I know you started out as a 14-year-old. So give me some idea as to who the women were that you began to idolise as a teenager coming up, and then how it started to evolve as well till you got to that point in 2010 where everyone went, actually, hang on a second, these women can go.
Yeah, I guess, growing up, women's rugby, in my eyes, wasn't really there. So I grew up in North London on a council estate. It wasn't very much rugby orientated. It was very football. You're either a Tottenham supporter or an Arsenal supporter. And I'm a massive Arsenal supporter. So, still got that in my blood. But it wasn't very much around rugby. And even when you did see rugby, I saw a lot of the men's rugby, but there wasn't much of it on TV anyway. So there was no one to be inspired by. So if anything, growing up, I was inspired by people like Denise Lewis, so heptathlon top athlete for Great Britain. And she inspired me, really. But I guess when I started to get into women's rugby, the athletes that really stood out to me were people like So Lisa Burgess, who actually was my PE teacher at the time, she played for the Welsh women's team and was a captain, and is also a Hall of Famer as well. So she inspired me. I would also say people like Maxine Edwards and Paula George as well. So both of them played for England. Two, BAME captains as well. So that kind of inspired me because I thought, wow, I want to one day play for England. Who knows, one day be captain. And people like Emma Mitchell as well played for England, brilliant number 9. So I had those kind of players really stood out to me, and I got to see them. But they were local players. That's why I think I had the visibility, and I could really be inspired by what I saw. And I guess now you think about many years on, there's so many female athletes sort of select from, which is brilliant. You don't just look at England, you look at every nation, and then you look at 15s rugby, you look at 7s rugby, and there's just so much now to sort of be inspired by. Especially if I look at the England team now, your likes of like Emily Scarrett, who's obviously performing incredibly well, is a brilliant athlete, Kate Daly-McLean and many others, and past players as well, like Danielle Waterman as well. So there's so many good players to sort of look up to. Well, I guess back in my time, there was only a few players you could really identify. And then you sort of like were hooked by them and you just followed their journey, I guess.
You're very humble. You've kind of just skipped across yourself as one of the most identifiable and well-known women's players in world rugby, basically. I mean, that's the simplest way of putting it. How have things transformed for you, or how did they begin to change as you and your presence began to lift on that front?
Yeah, so I guess when I first kind of came into it, I was just a typical player, who just loved the sport. I mean, for me, I grew up with a disability called clubfoot, so my right foot was turned in, really, and actually getting into sport was quite a challenge for me. So my foot got straightened, and even now I still have a bit of a limp. So I found rugby through my PE teacher, who said, you should try this sport out. It might help your behaviour, because I had quite bad behaviour at secondary school.
I can't imagine
you can't imagine.
No, that doesn't sound like you at all.
Oh, too nice. But I was quite a bad kid at school, almost got kicked out, and so she introduced me to the game. And then after that, I just fell in love with it, really, and just thought, again, if you really want to go far in anything you do, you have to keep putting time and effort in. And that's what I did. Again, there wasn't a lot of women's rugby to watch on TV. So if anything, I became a bit of a master of the game by watching lots of men's rugby. So I was obsessed with watching, at the time it was called just Super Rugby. So I used to watch that all the time. Obviously the Premiership Rugby. And the likes of Richie McCaw were just someone I had to watch day in, day out. And I honestly think it made a big difference to my game, because I just started to understand the game, but also understand how to be efficient when you play, and it's not just about working 110%. You've got to do a bit more than that. So I used to do a lot of that, and I think as my time started to develop, I felt the women's game started to also improve. So you started to see more top female athletes coming through. So previously you'd probably get into sport at university, age 19, maybe 20. Then I think as I started to progress through the game, you started to see more female athletes coming into the sport a lot younger, like most men and boys do, And I think that's what's changed the professionalism of the game now. We've got more athletes in the women's game who have been playing for the game for such a long time and know the game inside out. So I guess over my time, I started to say I came from, the amateur era to the professional era. I never was really a professional athlete. I was a semi-professional athlete when I retired, I guess. So I was involved in the 7s where we got funding there. And then in the 15s game, we had part support there as well. But the reality was you still had to work. And I guess that's when things started to again improve again. You had time to concentrate on being an athlete and work on your physique and your fitness. And for me, I love tackling. I mean that was my my superpower, I guess, and I think that's what allowed me to be the athlete that I am. Stan Warburton, he's a good tackler, and so is Richard McCaw, but on another level. But yeah, it's just I think those are the things that helped me be a better athlete, and I think when people see me as a rugby player when I used to play, they would say, that's one of the things that allowed you to be, I guess, a standout rugby player. It doesn't matter whether you're a boy, girl, male or female. If you're a good rugby player and you can make those big tackles, people absolutely love that. And I think that's what allowed me to get a lot of credibility in the game. And, even now that I've left, there's many more who can do just as much, and if not more. So that allowed me to, I think, build my profile up, and then allowed me to also step away.
Nickname the Machine. Who gave you that as a moniker?
It was after the World Cup in 2006. So we played the Rugby World Cup out in Canada, and we got to the final against New Zealand. And Darren Morris and Stuart Barnes, who work on Sky Sports in England, they were commentating on the game. And I think one of them called me the Machine, and then the Machine has stuck with me, really. It's one of those things, you can't bring in your own nickname. You've got to get someone else to bring it in for you. Otherwise,
I feel like you can. That's the thing. That's the irony. I think that you could actually give yourself your own nickname, but it seems to work. The one that they've thrown you landed.
It stuck with me. I mean, Shawnee, my surname's Alphonsi, so I've always tried to bring in the whole nickname, the Fonz, and actually no one's interested. No one, honestly, it doesn't. It just goes over people's heads. So I take the Machine. It works. It works well. It's got a nice ring to it.
It does. So you mentioned the dedication you gave to yourself, where you weren't a professional, but you trained like a professional, got your physique to that certain level as well. Of the women who are playing now, you obviously got a keen eye on it through your work as a commentator and all other ways of staying in touch with the game. Who are some of the women that are running around now that might not have been around at the back end of your career, where you go, wow, these women, the Machine would have struggled putting some of these women down?
Yeah. So do you know what? They were with me at the back end of my career to an extent. So, if I look now in terms of the number 7 position, and I'll focus on England because those are the players that I sort of keep an eye on a lot more. So Vicky Fleetwood, who was initially a hooker, who's now transformed to be a 7. And I always think sometimes the best 7s come from another position before they become a back row, because they've got a better vision of the game and running lines. And I think now that she's moved to that position, she's become a serious contender. Very fit, very athletic, is good at reading the game. And she never played 7 really when I was playing. And I think now that she's stepped into the mould over the last year and a half, I think she's been really brilliant, and her game has really gone on to another level. I would also say, who else has really kind of stand out to me, especially in that back row position? The likes of, and I mean, they were around when I was playing anyway, but Yamali Packers, she was about, obviously, when I was still playing towards the end of my career, because we played 6 to 7 in the World Cup final. But another player who's just matured massively, who's fit and strong, but has been through a lot of injuries. I think that also makes you a better player when you've been through the difficult times. Same with the likes of Heather Fishers, but she's more my age really. So we sort of come from the amateur era. But I like to say, whenever I talk about Heather Fisher, as she's got older, she's got fitter. So that's what I think. It's players like that who go with age, they've matured so well. Where for me, as I got older, my knees decided to not listen to me. So it definitely becomes a harder part of your game. But there's lots of young players who are coming through the system. I just think the ones who are sort of like in position now, who have a bit of experience behind them, are the ones that are really going to make a big difference in the next Women's Rugby World Cup, obviously taking place next year.
Yeah, that's just around the corner. Before we touch on what's to come in 2021, let's go back to 2014, because we can look at the vision over and over again when the time comes. Beyond this, what are your recollections of the game? Like, how often do you go back and just check in on it and remember the good times when you were still on the park?
Do you know what? I hadn't actually really watched the game since we played in it. I think, and so big thank you to World Rugby for showing the game. I think it was during our lockdown period, the repeat of it. And watching it, I was just like, wow, I cannot remember some of the bits that took place. There's a couple of times I've dropped the ball, and I was like, I never dropped the ball. Can't believe I dropped the ball. So it was really weird watching it again. But at the same time, the feeling was great, because I think going into that final, we felt unbeatable. We felt unstoppable. But at the same time, we knew it was always going to be a challenging final because Canada had a brilliant tournament up to that point. And we knew there was some really strong individuals in there that were going to really test us. But when I watched the final again, it makes me smile, you know. Playing in France is one of my favourite places to play anyway. So there was a good crowd, especially because I think the game beforehand, the third, fourth position or bronze medal game was played between France and Ireland, and there was a massive crowd there. So I think that it was nice to have the crowd there, and then the crowd stay for our game. But yeah, the memories are still positive. I think people ask me, you know, what did it feel like to win a gold medal during that game, after that game, sorry. And I always say it wasn't about being happy or ecstatic. It was actually just a relief, you know, because you go through many World Cups and then you get to a final, which is a very big thing to do, and then you lose. So I had lots of silver medals in my drawer, and all you ever want is that gold medal. So every time felt like a big uphill struggle. So when we finally reached it, so for me, I lost, you know, my team lost in 2006. And then again in 2010 in that World Cup. And then to finally win it, 12 years after sort of starting the game, it just felt such a relief to finally achieve it, to the point where you feel like, actually I've done personally everything I felt I can do, and my team can only get bigger and better and hopefully move on. So yeah, it was like a relief and a sort of overwhelming experience, but at the same time, just one that's I sort of cherished. Like, no one can take it away from me, and I'm, you know, very, very proud of my team and what we achieved on that day.
Are you able to demand a drink of your choosing from Danielle Waterman whenever you want for gifting her that try in the first half?
Do you know what's funny? Like, I still look back at that game and I watch that pass, and I'm like, first, what am I doing? Like, the pass wasn't the most quality of passes. It didn't necessarily go straight to hand. And then at the end of that pass, I sort of fell backwards. So, I to be honest, I don't know what moment I was in at that point. I think naturally I was probably thinking, do I really want to pass to Danielle Waterman right now? Maggie, why don't you score? Because actually this will be the best thing ever, and you'll get all these Twitter followers. And then I thought, obviously, no, it's not about me. It's 2v1, pass to Danielle, and she as she does so well, she took a ball that was really badly passed to her and scored a really good try. So it was just nice. You know, it was plays like that. You think, what I've always loved is when I've played alongside Danielle Waterman, she knows how to read where I'm going to be. So she's always on my shoulder somewhere. And it was just quite a relief that she was there, because I wouldn't have had the gas to get over the line. But I don't get, she doesn't offer me any drinks, but I try and like remind her of that one moment in 2014 where I actually passed the ball to her.
She'd remember too. She'd remember it all too well. So from there, the progression into, and I didn't know this before us chatting tonight, I sort of dived in and did some additional research around the chat. You had a crack at becoming a shot put athlete for the Olympics off the back of your rugby career. Run me through that and how that all played out.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Shawnee, it didn't turn out that well. I retired in 2015 officially from that's club rugby, and then so I used to be a shot put thrower. I was very much athletics is where I started off my sporting career, and then I thought what I'm going to do is try and get myself back into it. Especially Great Britain, we don't have many top well-known female shot putters or discus throwers. So I thought that would be a perfect opportunity to try and find my way into that world, really. And I'll be honest with you, it was a challenge. I mean, I'm physically strong and I've got good power, but most of the women in the sport are probably another 5 foot. You know, I like to think I'm tall, but you know, they're definitely like 6 foot, just a bit above me, and I could be their shot put. That's how small I am in comparison to them. So. I tried to give it a go. I spent almost 2 years. You know, I did the right thing. I recruited my team to help support me. And athletics is a very different structure to rugby, so I had to really understand that. And yeah, I got far, but I just wasn't going to make it really. And I'm glad I gave it a go, because it's good to sort of, you know, set your stall high and then hope you get there. Because I was trying to get to the Rio Olympics in 2016 and just didn't make it, but. You know, I gave it a go, but changing sports, you know, as many rugby players have done it, I take my hat off to them. It's not easy.
I was going to say, how did you go going from the team sport to doing it as just an individual? How much of a struggle was that?
That was the hardest bit. I think if you go from being an individual sport to another individual sport, that's where you see most athletes succeed because they're used to that, internally thinking about things, doing it on their own, and just focusing on themselves. Where I went from a team sport where I'm so used to having people around me, the energy is always there, different people have different skills and bring that to the party. That was really unique. And then to go from being an individual where actually it's all on you and there's in terms of energy, you've got to bring that. You can't rely on the people around you who are your coaches to do that. And I found that quite hard. It's quite draining to try and do that all the time. And being in your own space all the time was quite, I found boring to an extent. So I missed having a team, an actual rugby team around me, and the banter and the humour, but also the supportive nature where if you're struggling, there's someone there to always pat you on the back, where in an individual sport, you can rely on your coach, but it's just all you really. So I think that's what I found it more so, not necessarily the whole skill of throwing a shot, but look, the women were bigger and stronger than me, but actually getting used to being from a team to an individual was very hard.
But then you have the chance to go back into the team environment with your work as a commentator and pundit. How have you enjoyed that jump onto the other side of the camera?
Do you know, it's been fun. It was hard to start off with. I can't lie to you. It's always a challenge when you go from a career transition, especially where you think you're top dog when you're playing the sport like rugby, and then all of a sudden you go into something else where the sport, elements around obviously how to communicate and talk about a ruck and all and all of that. But it's very difficult to be able to be comfortable and confident and be authentic with it as well. So that was a challenge transitioning over to that. And it's taken me, I like to say, a lot of time to get used to it, and still always learning. But I absolutely love it because I always think to myself, I don't want to overcomplicate things when I communicate in terms of being a pundit or commentator. I always think I want more people to watch the sport. So actually try and communicate in a way that, again, that is authentic, but also is about, actually, I'm going to really intrigue many others who are new to the sport. And hopefully they will be hooked by you trying to explain it to them, or using your excitement to really bring energy to it. So I've really enjoyed it. It's had its ups and downs, but that's like in any sort of career. And what's great is you see many more, especially women anyway, who are coming into the world commentating punditry. It's brilliant. There's a good diverse range of people who are speaking on the men's and women's game.
And who are you learning from? That's a key question as well in that space. You're a professional with everything you do. Who are you learning from to take it to that next level?
Well, I'm a big fan of Gareth Thomas, Welsh legend who's obviously retired a while ago. He's one of my biggest fans, only because he's, again, very authentic, very relaxed, and doesn't have to read auto cues or anything like that. He just, especially as a pundit, he just speaks from the heart. And I think because of that, the fans love him. He's just a good guy, and a good guy who's passionate about either Wales or watching the game. And that's what he builds, that emotional connection with the audience, as well as what he's saying is accurate and true. So I think I love watching him and how he works. But at the same time, I love watching the likes of Sir Clive Woodward, in what he does, and Sir Ian McGeechan as well, because they're very much a manager / coach mindset, and the way they deliver their detail is really interesting. So it's a mixture, really. And obviously yourself, Shawnee, I love listening to you. When you as a commentator in particular, you're so relaxed. I've seen you deliver, and I've listened to you many times. And things like that is quite important, I feel to be a good pundit or commentator, you have to listen to different types of people, different types of voices, because you just pick up different bits, really. So, for me, it's been, and like I said, most of the people that I speak about are men, because that's what I've heard more and more. But like I said, now there's more women coming through. I get the chance to listen to them as well. So you'd learn from different types of people.
There are plenty of very talented female broadcasters coming through, which is exciting as it is the evolution and the continued development of the women's game as well. I've got one last question for you, and I've left the trickiest one for last for you before we let you get back to prepping up for the arrival of the little one. What's the lasting impression, Maggie Alphonsi, you want to leave on the game of rugby?
That's a good question. I guess for me, the last impression I want to leave is very much around growing our game, and it's very topical right now, diversity and inclusion. So for me, one thing I'm very passionate about is growing diversity and inclusion in senior leadership roles, especially within our governing bodies. So, I have aspirations to one day be the RFU president, and that if I do that, I potentially will be the first woman and the first woman or person of color to achieve that. And I think that's what I want my legacy to be now. I want to be more of a visibility of a person of visible, who's visible, but as a leader. I want to work in the world of governance. I thoroughly find that entertaining and interesting. And I want to make sure that we keep growing our sport, not just in England, but also globally, working with many nations and unions to ensure that we have different types of people coming through and helping our game become a sport that leads the way, that many other sports want to follow. So I guess that's the last, it's a big last impression, but that's the last impression I hope to have in the sport. And I hope that my little one, so I'm giving birth to a boy, I'm expecting a little Marutoji. So, in the future, I hope that this little one can have an impact on the world as well in a positive way. So that's my hope.
I'm just trying to envisage a household that has a mini Toje up against an Alphonsi. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
I can imagine,
Mags,
honestly,
all the
like
very
big
best.
muscly arm.
Yes, I can imagine. Hey, all the very best for the arrival of the little one, as I said. Hope it all goes smoothly. That's all that really matters at the end of the day. But we wait with bated breath to see how you come out the other side and when you sink your teeth back into that next step. And thank you for joining World Rugby's Between the Lines.
Excellent. Thank you.